warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Alhamdulillah, how are you doing?
Alhamdulillah.
How was your time away? I'm going to call that.
Alhamdulillah, eventful. Attended a few masajid events and then had some time for myself. And on my way back, I scored some money for the government. 3 speeding tickets. I didn't even know I was speeding. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala bring us down to size and down to speed.
Inshallah, we'll talk now about that. But which area did you go to?
I was in the Eastern Cape.
What is the town that you were in?
No.
And you can't call Port Elizabeth. You're not allowed to call it Dubai either. You must call it on the No, not allowed.
Okay, that place.
Tobaga. Hey.
Yes, you have your own bio, so I go to the place and you pronounce the.
Hey, mashallah. That's good. And you saw some wildlife on that side as well?
Alhamdulillah, fortunate to have spent some time with the creation of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It's, it's so amazing to see animals of that speed and that strength. And you're so close to them, and yet they don't harm you. A lion, when he's fed, he's fed. When he has his full, he doesn't go for more than what he can consume. And somehow human beings are somewhat different.
Are you saying the lions are all in shape?
No, I didn't say shape. I just said
Okay.
As for shape, don't go there.
I still don't see the blue foe behind me at all. I'm just going to leave that one right there. But it's good to be live with you.
Round is also a shape, but not the shape that I want to be. So.
Yeah, but it'll be a square, that's all. But tonight, we got a great discussion this evening with somebody that's been on our platform before. I've engaged with this gentleman a number of times over a lengthy period of time. We had a program together. It's pretty much like we had. We had the bromance. And
the bromance continues.
Yes, the bromance continues. Check you out. Come to daddy jokes, so let me not go with that. That's what they find daddy jokes as well.
Teacher, inshallah, I don't know. It's a technical team. They on the sheet for this evening. Okay, but later.
Are you doing the sheet?
I told you I'm from the false spy. Of false spy. So no, I won't be doing it, inshallah. A bit later.
Inshallah.
Laylatul Jum'ah, and the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam tells us to increase his salawat on him. Sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So that's part of what we'd like to also do in this program, inshallah. But tonight we have a very serious topic. We used to all banter and make jokes, but definitely this is something which shocked the community or shocks the community whenever and however it happens, and it happens on a daily basis. Sometimes we just find the result of it being having a big impact on the community, and that's the issue of bullying.
So those watching this evening, they can be part of the conversation. They can send in their questions, raise their concerns, and we'll try and answer as many of them as we possibly can. As like you said, it's a very serious topic, and many times children don't speak out about it. They just deal with it, or they get pushed away to deal with it. But I'm not the expert. I don't know.
An expert.
We have an expert. Absolutely. Way easy. I don't see him.
Assalamu alaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. So good to see you both. But I must say at the beginning that your voices are a bit garbled, not very clear.
Can you hear us, Uncle Edries?
I can hear you now, yes. Can you hear me?
Okay.
We can
hear you very clearly, alhamdulillah.
Okay.
Okay, mashallah.
So,
yes.
Yes, no, definitely. Clear. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi, Uncle Edries.
Assalamu alaikum.
Welcome back to our platform. Inshallah, it's always a pleasure to have you and your experience.
It's good to be back. It's good to be back. In fact, even it was a short time since the last program, I was pining for your people's company. I was in pain. So Alhamdulillah, I'm so excited that we are reconnecting.
Yes, yes. Yeah, and I told Chicha we need to get the closest thing to the Bosnian hat. We couldn't go to Bosnia and we had to settle for what do they call these things? Paperboy hats, golf hats. So the closest
Yes,
Lila. We good to
yes.
happy to have you. And it's Thursday night, and the community is looking for answers on how to deal with this very tough issue.
Sure.
Chicha.
Uncle Idris, you've been an educator. You've been the headmaster of a school of schools, and it's something that I know from growing up uh, just a few years ago. But being at school, it's something that's rife. It's called bullying, and it's something that's affecting the children by and large, and they don't speak about it. So, firstly, I want to start off the advice that we would give to the child that is being bullied. What advice could you give? Because normally kids come into the parents and say, "Look, this one is hitting me. This one is doing that." I say, just so fight your own battles. Please leave or go away. And teachers, in some educators, also do that in some instances. But what advice do we give to the one that's being bullied?
I think a very critical thing is this, that the authorities, be it at school or the moral authority at home, the parents, must always be protectors of children without fighting their battles. And a critical aspect is this, that if any of our children are bullied, when they intimidated, when there is a group bullying that is going on, when they are being mobbed, as it were, it can be a very, very frightening experience, to a point in which you feel a sense of insecurity. And it's important to articulate it, number one. And secondly, the other critical aspect is this, that they need to ensure that, number one, that if there is an issue, they need to speak to an authority about it. And the authority must take them into confidence, because if the person is bullying, is aware that you have, in essence, spoken about them, then it could be quite an ordeal afterwards. So it's important that they need to use a lot of wisdom. The other aspect is that when they do discuss it with the authority of the school needs to have two particular aspects. They need to have a policy regarding that. And secondly, they need to educate the children, because in the end, you got to ask yourself, why is it that any person bullies? What is it, right? Because one of the most important things that you can teach anyone is the dynamics of relationship, that you meet all types of people. And it's very, very important that how you deal with each individual. Each one of us is unique. And that's a very critical aspect on the one hand. On the other hand is this, that whilst there may be a scenario in which there are groups of people or individuals who do the bullying, you got to ensure that you are arm's length away from them, that you do not in any way provoke them. Now you find that it is natural, almost instinctive for people at a school level to gravitate in the end towards those that are macho and those that have a sense of bravado, because you, in essence, you feel a sense of protection. And I think what is critical is that the message you must give to your children is that the day you feel a sense of insecurity, it's very, very important that you articulate it and you speak about it, because this is such a broad topic. I mean, for example, there is this erroneous perception that those that bully have a low self-esteem. In fact, there are people that have a fairly healthy self-esteem also can become bullies, because what happens sometimes, they have what you call frail and fragile egos, as it were. A person with a high self-esteem is quite comfortable with himself and does not succumb necessarily to negative peer pressure. And there could be, we could discuss the next question perhaps is why is that people bully? What is it that makes them bully? What's the psychology behind all of this? And how do we move forward? Sorry, I can't hear.
Inshallah, Uncle Idris, before we go into the discussion deeper, how do we define, a bully? Because sometimes Chicha calls me a bully because I run quite a tight ship, and can can you hear me now, inshallah?
Yeah, yeah, I can hear you.
Are you
Yes,
able to hear
yes.
me?
Are you able to hear me?
Yes, I can.
Uncle Idris, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you clearly. Yes.
All right.
Assalamu alaikum, Uncle Idris.
Ya alaikum salam.
So whilst we're trying to sort out the gremlins quickly, um, it's like you say, it's an important topic. It's a sensitive topic, because perhaps um, parents don't even want to hear that the child is a bully.
Yeah.
Uncle Idris, if you can hear us.
I can hear you. Yes, I can hear
Yes.
you.
All
I
right.
can hear you.
Somebody is also complaining about.
Is it?
Yeah. All
Okay.
right.
Okay,
Okay.
Alhamdulillah.
Right.
Now, Uncle Idris, before we were interrupted technologically, I was asking, how do you define a bully? Because sometimes Chicha calls me a bully, when I want things done today and not tomorrow, and we want everything to run smooth. He calls me a bully. But how do we really define a bully?
Okay, you see, there is a difference between when you try to assert yourself. Nothing wrong with the assertion. It's very, very important that we must be assertive individuals. But the problem is
We said,
when
how
you,
do you define a bully?
yes, a bully is a person that uses force, uses intimidation, uses threats to get what he wants. He's a person that would enjoy getting other people to surrender to his whims and fancies. He would be a person that would be aggressive in his manner, in his demeanor. He's a person that would, in essence, often terrify people around him. He would like other people around him to be subordinates, as it were, to be at his beck and call, right? And that's a bully. They're a person that does that. And one of the ironies is this: if you look at the etymology of the word bully, I mean, in the 1530s, the word bully was defined as a sweetheart. Can you believe it? As a sweetheart. And it is not fortuitous or by chance that the word has degenerated. And this is the whole thing, you see. It's about relationships in the end. When relationships start on even keel, and you find that suddenly one of the individuals in that relationship, be it in a marriage or whatever it is, would begin to adopt other measures to get what he or she wants. So it is not something that is based on respect or reciprocal understanding, not based on compassion. It's a one sided thing. Hello?
the reason why bully? Is it a matter of self-esteem?
Sorry, I didn't hear that. Hello?
Okay, Idris, can you hear me?
I can hear you now, yes.
Okay. A question that I've received, I'll try this again. It says
Okay.
here, um, is the same reason a person gets bullied, is that the reason why bullies bully? Is that a matter of self-esteem?
It is multifactorial, right? You find that often a bully is a person, often, I'm not saying all the time, has a very, very low self-esteem, a very low self-concept. And he seems to get validation and affirmation when he's able to push people around. It makes him feel macho. He makes him feel very, very popular. Now, that is really a defense mechanism. It's basically hiding his insecurities. He's not a kind of person that you could have a conversation with. He lacks the capacity to negotiate. He doesn't want to negotiate. He wants to just be in charge. And as a result of that, he would try whatever means of aggression, intimidation, and so on and so forth to get what he wants.
Sure. Sheikh, anything from your side, Sheikh?
Now, before we had our technical issues, Uncle Idris, I wanted to ask, what is the definition of a bully? Because I jokingly said that Chicha calls me a bully sometimes, and there's that thin line between asserting yourself and actually making somebody feel bad. And Chicha, do I make you feel bad when I do assert myself?
No.
But how do we define a bully, Uncle Idris?
Okay, as I said earlier on, a bully is an individual who uses intimidation, he uses coercion, he uses force to get what he wants. It's basically about dominance and subservience. He wants other people to be subservient to him. Now, the thing about being assertive is something all of us should be, but there is a big difference between being assertive and aggressive. When you are assertive, is because you believe in something, you want to achieve your particular goal. And therefore, one of the very important qualities in a dynamic leader is the fact that he's assertive. Otherwise, what's going to happen if you're not assertive in that position, whatever position you are, people around you are going to take advantage. They are not going to comply. And that's a very, very big difference. Now, you got to understand also, when people feel intimidated by you, even though you're not bullying them, there's a difference. Someone can feel intimidated by me. He can feel intimidated purely because of his own insecurities. He could feel intimidated because he's not an authority on the subject. So as a result, that when you are talking to him, he feels, my gosh, this guy knows so much, I just feel so insecure, so intimidated. And it's not that the person intends to do that. But the difference is a bully is part of his intention. He's aware of what his objectives are. He's acutely aware that as a result, for example, if there's a bully in school, right? If he finds someone else walking to the school that is muscular, looks a bit aggressive and intimidated, what happens? He himself begins to feel insecure because now about who's going to control the turf? And as a result, if people under, as it were, I won't say custodianship, people that are in fear of him who hang around him, if they gravitate towards the other person, this can be very, very problematic,
Sure. Uncle Idris, you spoke about earlier on, and you spoke about articulation, that you must be able to articulate. A 5-year-old and a 6-year-old may not have that capacity to be able to articulate the challenges they are facing. So the educator and the parent needs to have a mechanism by which they can understand and decipher maybe sometimes the messaging given by this young individual. That obviously would have to be some sort of a skill or some just being an attentive ear for that matter.
It's more than I lost you a bit, but anyway, I think I have a gist of what you're trying to ask me. You see, you must understand that as parents, you got to be very, very vigilant. As teachers, you find that when you see that your son, that is normally quite vocal and social, as it were, he comes home and his head is down, he wants to spend time on his own, then you realize that something is amiss. Something is amiss. So I think what's very important, that parents need to inspire confidence in the children. You see, children are children. They're born with fitra. They can make out, when someone has another agenda, I mean, in a sense, where they notice, for example, that they are feeling uncomfortable in someone's presence, as it were. And you find that they are able to pick up these cues. And I think it's important for parents especially to make them acutely aware of what is allowed, what is looked down upon, and what they should do if, for example, they're confronted with an individual who has certain behavioral tendencies.
Yes. And sometimes I was also the bully. Just looking back, Chicha and Uncle Idris, grade 8, standard 6. It was well known that on the first day of school, the matrics or the grade 11s, they will make you measure the parking lot or the grass with a sucker stick, or they'll stick your head into the toilet as part of an initiation. It never happened to me, but I feared that when going to high school. But it was almost like a norm. The next step when you go to high school, that's going to happen. And I think the way we dealt with bullying a few decades ago is much different. And I think the wiring of our learners are much different, and how much they can be, and how much they do interact with. We had our issues back then, 20, 30, 40, 40 years ago. But now, things are so much more complicated. When you had to face your bully at school, so between 8 and 3, he would bully you, and then you go home and you don't see him till the next day. But now we have something called cyberbullying.
Yeah.
You understand? Which it never ends, and people gang up against you online. So definitely, the ways of bullying has changed, and how much the bullied actually has to be.
I just want to ask, Uncle Idris, you speak about bullying, and something that Sheikh has just mentioned now, he's speaking about the times that we live in. So we live in this time now where we face a lockdown for 18 months or whatever. How has that played into the hands of either the bully or the one being bullied? Because perhaps the social engagement is no as there, but to a lesser extent. How has this played into either one of their hands?
You see, firstly, the one that is bullied, who's not at school anymore, would now feel a sense of security on the one hand, and the one that bullies, suddenly he finds that there is a kind of social detachment, and his need is not being met, as it were. And the point that has been made, what happens then? They would try other means. They would use social media. They'll do cyberbullying and so on and so forth. And you find that it's also important that when they get back to school, you find that when youngsters, for example, show a lot of reluctance of going back to school, then that's one of the telltale signs of something is amiss. Besides, naturally, that people are not inclined towards schooling, that's another matter. And so we need to understand that. And therefore, a critical aspect to us, our children, is to get to know their friends. Who are their friends? And those friends should be able to come home. We could talk to them and so on and so forth. And perhaps that will give you some idea what is going on. And so this issue of bullying is something quite grave and serious. And it must not be underestimated, because it can be fatal.
Uncle Idris, you spoke about cliques and you spoke about certain people gelling. And even the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he mentions in a hadith that al-arwah junudul mujannada, that the souls are like conscripted soldiers, right? And so we click with those people that we know, and then there's sometimes, people that we don't click with for no reason at all. As an educator, sometimes we push people to all be friends. Everybody should be friends with each other. But the reality of it all is that not everybody is going to be friends. So how do we deal with that issue? Sometimes you force somebody to sit next to another person because they have a squabble. Is that best practice to actually put the bully and bullied next to each other in a classroom to try and make them friends?
You see, the critical aspect is this. I believe that you can get along with everyone, but there are few people that you become very, very close to. These are really your soulmates, people that subscribe to the same kind of value systems, those individuals that are not toxic, those individuals who are purveyors of good and not of evil, right? And it does not mean that if you have others around you who may not have or embrace this wholesome qualities, that you cannot, in essence, have a relationship with them. But your relationship with them is not going to be an intimate relationship, right? And we are told that we are going to be with our friends in the year after. And it's a very, very powerful thing. And our Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam also reminded us that there is no good in him who neither befriends or is befriended. In other words, you stretch out your hand for friendship to a person you do not know, and you also, in essence, when someone stretches out their hand towards you, that you reciprocate. And that's the whole thing, you see. It's very, very critical. And you spoke earlier on, the reference was made about today and the days gone by. And you got to understand that in the days gone by, it appeared almost natural for people to engage others. Most people were socially competent. We played games together and so on and so forth. And there was no social media as a kind of intrusion. And now we are not staying anymore in extended families, but in nuclear families. And as a result, the social engagement is very, very limited. And as a result of that, there is a lack of social competence, as it were. And then what happens? Then when you are at school, you are suddenly, in a particular situation where there is no other option but to engage with people around you. And many of them may be bully types, or others becomes problematic. And the other important aspect is this, that you find that today, sadly, what is important is this, that today we are living a time of instant gratification, where children get whatever they want, and as a result, they don't have to negotiate with things. And what is very important is this, that your aim in life must be to be the best individual you can. And then you also need to realize, with some individuals you cannot continue in a particular direction with them, except by maintaining relationships with others. It does not mean you stop talking to the others.
Uncle Idris, you speak about instant gratification. Um, is it correct in saying that sometimes we try and overcompensate with our children also? You spoke about, we don't stay with extended families anymore. We stay in nuclear families, and sometimes we even stay with single parents, not even
Correct.
a regular nuclear family. And then we have also, with this pandemic, many unfortunately parents loss. And so sometimes we find that the child plays on that, that type of family they're living in, and they could claim. Is it possible that children could sometimes claim bullying to one parent, saying, "No, I'm not happy with the school. Put me in another school." Do we find that children, play up these type of issues? I'm not saying we shouldn't take it seriously, but does it happen that sometimes the bullied cries cries wolf, and then uses that to manipulate.
You see, I'm glad you are contextualizing it. These are very, very abnormal times. And you find that the point that you make, that many children grow up with single parents, right? And children are children, they can also manipulate. But the critical thing is this, that when they do complain about bullying, we should take it seriously. We must take it seriously. And to say that big boys don't cry, it's problematic, you know, because in the end, you got to, in essence, investigate it. Right? It's very, very important. And that's one. The second important aspect is this, that in our homes, I think one of the things that we have forfeited, that we appear to be only biologically connected to our children, but we are not connected with them spiritually and otherwise. We do not nurture in them those kinds of values, because in the end, we want boys that are courageous, boys not so much being men in the macho sense, but being gentlemen. It's about etiquettes in Islam and those aspects. And you find that one of the things that I've noted, that more and more I find that children all suffer from what I call emotional deprivation. And because of the emotional deprivation, they find it very, very difficult to express their feelings and attitudes. And you find that when they go to a school, after a day or two, they say they cannot cope. And then you find the fathers and mothers pamper them, and they say, okay, fine, I'll take you to another school. But they don't realize a common denominator is a child. He would be going from another school and be carrying himself with him. I think it's important, on the one hand, to make our children resilient, developing them the capacity to engage with others, and thirdly, to make informed choices, because the same young child who is going to be a young adult might find himself in the workplace where he's earning a living and looking after his family, and he'll be dealing with all kinds of individuals, and we cannot protect our children from that environment that is maybe toxic also. But what is important that we must learn to have conversations with our children. Psychologists have said revealing is healing. It's important for our children to speak what's in their heart, and in that way it's a cathartic experience for them. And in that way, the worst thing ever is for any child, boy or girl, who says, you know what, I cannot complain to my father or mother. They'll say we are sissies. And what happens? They begin to endure the bullying, the harassment, to a point in which it becomes so untenable that they do something that is going to shock you.
Uncle Idris, I want to play a little bit devil's advocate here with you, a little bit.
So please.
And the first thing I want to make mention of is that I think it's a misnomer to think that bullying only happens between boys. That's the first thing I want to make mention of. The second thing I want to say is that children are reaching out to their parents, and I'm making a statement. I'm not saying this is my view, but I would like to engage you in sort of a feedback with regards to it. They reach out to their parents. Their parents are fixated on this item in my hand. The child is coming to them and saying, I have a challenge, I have an issue. They look at him or her, and they're not paying full attention to what the causes are. Tomorrow he or she comes again, same issue. Day 3, same thing, and goes on for a period of time. So there's nobody that the child can reach out to, although the parent is there, but the parent is not present. The parent is actually absent from this, because the parent has escaped into cyberspace, whatever has happened. And that child now feels, I need to deal with it on my own. And we go back to this child, subhanAllah, that has taken his own life. But I'm almost certain that there would have been signs along the way. There would have been attempts to reach out for assistance, on various platforms, and perhaps it didn't come.
Yeah, you know what? I agree with you. I think we are on the same page. I think an important thing is this, that parenting is not remote control. Parenting is good parents are sensitive, and they are able to detect from the body language, from the demeanor, from the tenor of the child, that something is wrong, something is amiss. So I think what's important is this, that I'm sure that the child tried to reach out. But what happens, there comes a time where the child says, you know what, whenever I got an issue, I talk to my mom or dad, they are totally insensitive. In fact, they reprimand me. They say, you're a crybaby. And then sometimes what happens, as I said prior to your question, that you know what happens in the end, it's a recipe for disaster. And I think it brings us back to this important aspect, that one of the things, let's say eating time is meeting time. It's a time when you have conversations on the table, where you as a father, the Amir of the home, right, you talk about your day, you talk about the challenges, and you also try to elicit a response from the rest of the family. And at least that will give them an adult perspective. And each one speaks about the day, and it's very, very important. Therefore, they say it's better to do a biopsy rather than an autopsy. It's better to know what's happening at this moment than after the damage has been done. So what we need really, our home supposed to be a haven, a sanctuary in which we are able to talk about what's going on in our lives, our sharing our joys and sharing our sadness.
Sure. Uncle Idris, like Chicha mentioned, referring to a certain happening in the community, as parents and educators or seniors in the community, which signs do we look out for when possibly a child can be thinking about hurting himself or ultimately even taking his or her own life? Are there certain red flags that are common in your experience?
You see, you find there are many signs. If you find that your son or daughter, who's perhaps little is exuberant, the voices become muted. If they are spending less time together as a family, they're spending more time alone in the room, right? And when you look at the body language, their heads are drooping, and so on and so forth, right? Then you know that there's something amiss, because what happens, that they are at an age, try as they may, they cannot contrive their behavior. But what impacts on them internally would manifest itself in change behavior, in the change of body language. And therefore, it is very, very important to know, who the best friends are of the children. And secondly, it's good to go to the school, just, to find out from the teachers whether your son or daughter in the recent past, are they still engaged in school or whatever. And also, if you find that you're getting they are not showing an interest perhaps in the hobbies, not showing an interest in perhaps some of the rituals you have at home, or not showing an interest in school whatsoever, or even they are saying, you know what, I don't want to go to school. So these are signs. And but what is important is this, you see, the critical aspect is this: if children know that my mom and dad love me, they love me because my father and mother demonstrate their love to me, they hug me, they reassure me, they are my protectors. And if they have enough confidence in you that if I have an issue, my father will not reprimand me. He'll listen to me with empathy and with understanding, and then he'll engage me. Then he'll ask me, okay, what do you think we should do regarding this issue? And you find this is a very, very critical thing. And this lockdown, as it were, besides bullying itself, it has really, in essence, accelerated the number of suicides in the community. I mean, there's one thing, young people doing it, they are also adults. When adults themselves feel disempowered, they feel a sense of insecurity, they feel emasculated, and so on and so forth. And they take up their life. And I think it's important for us as people of faith to realize that this is the nature of our deen, that Allah will test us, and we have not reached the end in the road, but the bend in the road. So we have to, under all circumstances, be positive. You've got to also, in essence, be solution driven and let children know, teach them that they must choose good friends. I'll give you one example. Just a simple example, right? If I could, right? One of my prayers, as it were, before I walked into any class, I said, Ya Allah, show me the unhappy child. Show me the unhappy child. And the reason I did that, because one of my ex-pupils, I wasn't at the school, she committed suicide. It was another school, and she wasn't a Muslim girl, but still, she's a creation of Allah. And I said to myself, Allah knows best. If I had been at the school, I have no doubt she would have spoken to me about what is ailing her. So when I used to make the dua, Ya Allah, show me the unhappy child, Allah used to show me. Allah used to show me the unhappy child. And this is an important thing, So teachers need to understand that their role is not just spewing out information or dealing with the cognitive. It's about spiritual, it's about affective, it's about all these things. It's providing holistic learning to our children, so our children are empowered to deal with disappointments, dealing with disenchantment, and dealing with changes around them.
Uncle Idris, you mentioned three very important matters, and that's the issue of discussion. And it's even Quranic to discuss things with your children. I mean, like Nabi Ibrahim, when he's given the order to slaughter Ismail, he has a discussion, and he says, "Fanzur madha tara." What do you see about what's your opinion regarding this situation? So it's not sometimes you find people saying that this is new age parenting, discussing things with your children. Years before, our father would just say, you go to school A and you go to maktab or madrasa B and you play soccer, because our family doesn't play rugby, and we try and mimic. And I think that's one of the biggest problems that we have, Uncle Idris. We mimic our parenting that we are doing in current day. We mimic what was done before. And similarly in marriages, Chicha, I don't know if you agree with that. Sometimes growing up, we say, no, I'm going to run my household differently. Yeah. But you end up mimicking your parents.
Yeah, you ask me my opinion? Shaykh, ask Uncle Idris.
Okay. Anyway, I'm getting a bit nervous. You're not focusing on me. I'm feeling insecure.
I'm not bullying you, Uncle.
No, I don't get bullied. Don't worry. You see, the whole thing is this. If you bring up children how you were brought up, listen to these words. If you bring up children how you were brought up, or if you teach children how you were taught, you rob your children of tomorrow. Look at that. You rob your children of tomorrow. I'm not suggesting everything that has been taught to us or the methodology is irrelevant. But today we are living in a different kind of world. They say if you miss a beat, you miss a generation. The attention span of young people is different. So you can't go and sermonize and lecture and so on and so forth with them. It's important that there has to be an engagement. The children need to participate also in their own upbringing. And we need to understand the experiential world of children. Their minds are so consumed by so many things. It's very difficult to be a young person today. It's very, very difficult. So it's very, very important to understand that we need to empower them, because in the end, we want young boys and girls that are resilient, they are strong, who do not succumb to negative peer pressure. They need to be upholders of the faith. They need to be ambassadors. That's what we need. We are not people that are passive receptacles of knowledge. Neither are we spectators in our own life.
Uncle, it is a very simple question. It's not going to take you long. You're probably going to give it to me in like 30 seconds, the answer to this question, right? Why does the bully or the bullied become the bully?
Yeah, you see what happens is this. There comes a time when the bully says, I can't take it anymore. I cannot take it anymore. I remember there is a book written by the late Kenneth Kaunda, the president of Zambia, when he says Zambia shall be free. And he speaks about, how they attain independence from Great Britain. And he said, if a lion torments a lamb every day, there'll come a time, much to the surprise of the lion, the lamb will pounce on it, right? You know what happens when you are a bully? You are comfortable there. You think you are not vulnerable. You are there. You are strong, and no one can ever intrude your space. And there comes a time when the person says, I cannot take it anymore. I cannot take it anymore. And when they do that, the bullied, when he begins to suddenly unleash his pent up anger, and this is what often happens. And you find that, a critical thing is this, that if you look at the mindset of a bully, the psychology of it all, that often bullies come from unhappy homes. They come from dysfunctional families. They perhaps come from homes where one or two of the parents are bullies. And this is something that really makes them feel it's a norm. And when you find that when parents tell them, you're going to fight your own battle, be like us, don't be a sissy, right? If they complain to the father that someone provoked them, he said, what did you do? Were you quiet or did you hit back? You must hit back. They did not respect authority at all.
Okay, Idris, we're speaking about the bullied individual. How do we help the bully? The Prophet ﷺ tells us, "Unsur akhaka zaliman aw mazluman." Assist and help your brother, whether he is the oppressor and the oppressed, or the oppressed. Both of them, both parties need help. As a parent of a bully, what can the parent do? I mean, the school calls you in and says, look, your son beat up somebody, or your daughter's tormenting someone. The first time you might say, look, it's just child play, kids are kids. And it happens a second and a third time. So where to for the parent that has a child with this issue that is bullying other, or she is bullying other children?
You see, one of the things that you got to understand, that you got to ask yourself firstly, why does a person bully? A person bullies because it gives them a sense of immediacy, a sense of superiority. It gives them a sense of excitement. They are in control, and it's something that excites them, right? Now you find that one of the best ways of dealing with them is not so much to reprimand them in public. I mean, is to take them aside. They say a teacher is not a sage on the stage, but a guide on the side. Similarly, the father needs to change his methodology and see how he could ingratiate himself with his son. And one of the things that I used to do at school, right? If I found a person that is bullying, intimidating people around him, not doing his homework, and being of a disturbance in the class, what I used to do, I should take that person out and I tell the person, you know what, if you're not interested in your work, I mean, I can understand. And there's a great chance that perhaps you might even pass, without paying much attention in the class. But I'm concerned about, you're sitting next to Muhammad there, and that little boy, I mean, that young boy is trying there, and you're disturbing him, and it'd be very sad that if he has to fail, and perhaps you don't need my attention as he does, So you try different methodologies. Similarly, a father needs to win the heart over. And sometimes a bully does things to seek attention. And what's important, and in the conversation, the father must not reprimand him as such in the beginning. He needs to engage him and and he should ask his son, you know what, we bring you up at home here, we do whatever we can. What do you think we need to do differently? Is there something that you feel that is missing, you would like us to do? And in that conversation, you'll be surprised how much will be revealed, right? And also, I think another critical aspect is that often the persons who bullies, he has one or two friends that are in many ways like him, but perhaps they are not as aggressive as he is. And I think it's
Mhm.
important to also try to engage them, you know. And the
Yeah.
other thing that is also important, and this is very, very critical, you cannot allow your son or daughter, no matter what bully is, to do things with impunity. There has to be consequences for everything they do.
So in South Africa, we face something, and I'm going to fast forward the conversation. We have something which will comes up in December when we look at GBV. All right. Uh, what is the chances are that there's a direct correlation between bullying at school that's not being addressed and gender-based violence that takes place? Fast forward, as I said, 5, 6, 7 years after the child leaves school, and now there's a problem at home in terms of that. Is there? I think there could be a direct correlation between the two.
Absolutely. Now you find that as I said, I said that people who bully are not people that have the patience to have a discussion. For them, it's about control. It's about my way. It's a one-sided thing. I mean, for example, I just heard today when this one person showed an interest in the girl, and his opening words were that when I'm home, food must be ready. This must be done. That must be done. I said that is a good example of a bully, right? Now
Mhm.
you find if you got whatever you want, whenever you want through bullying, you'll persist with it. And remember,
Mhm.
bullying is not only about threats and intimidation. It's also about using, your hands, about being violent, and it's
Mhm.
about instilling fear. It's about control, and this is and I agree with you. There is a direct correlation between that. You'll never find a person that is placid, malleable, agreeable, and so on and so forth, who will get into a marriage and become an aggressor. That doesn't happen.
Uncle Idris, Chicha, you make a very important point there about, and Uncle Idris mentioned the lack of being able to negotiate. And we find that even in the Quran, again with Nabi Ibrahim, Uncle Idris, where his father tells him, if you don't stop with your nonsense, we're going to stone you or we're going to kill you. Right? And this is a father speaking to a son. He comes with a message. The father's unable to negotiate and to respond to what he's calling to because the father's fashioning idols and he's calling towards Tawheed. Now, with the lack of the ability to negotiate, in comes the violence. And it's amazing how bullying even happened, in pre-Islamic times. And then, Uncle Idris, you mentioned the bystander. I think this is something we need to teach our children because the bully does have a click. And looking back, Chicha and Uncle Idris, bullies in my time, they were always from families where they had bigger brothers, they had more brothers, they were like a pack. You never find a loner. Hardly ever you find a loner that's a bully. And I think we need to teach our children when they are in that bystander situation how to diffuse it. Instead of taking out your phone and recording it and sending it to social media, our bully is beating up someone, that bully's immediate click should try and diffuse that because when bullying happened in the time of the Prophet Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, and we're looking at a companion like Abdullah ibn Mas'ud, was very small and very, frailly built. And what some of the companions laughed at the size of his legs, of his shins. And the Prophet ﷺ immediately diffused that by saying, was speaking about the status of Abdullah ibn Mas'ud. If you had to weigh that shin of Abdullah ibn Mas'ud next to someone else with a bigger body, he would outweigh it. So I think, the bystander, Uncle Idris, how do we teach our children if they're in that situation of being a bystander, how to diffuse,
Okay.
situations?
I think before I forget, I think let me just mention this point first before I come to bystander. I think the most critical thing that we need to nurture in our children, and this is the most effective antidote in terms of helping you to manage your own emotions and the emotions of others is the whole issue of emotional intelligence. And that is something that you're not born with. It's not something intrinsic, but something is learnt behavior. And if we can do that, if we can help people to deal with the emotions, to deal with the anger, and to deal with become socially aware, and to deal with others. And I think that's very, very important. The whole issue of bystander, if you're a bystander, really, in essence, you are aiding and abetting the other person. And Islam is very, very clear. You need to enjoin that which is good and forbid that which is evil. So there is no place for being a person that is passive. And it's important, to speak to people, because even the bully, he has a moment or two when he's not bullying, when he is in a different mode, as it were. And it's important for that individual, people around him, to engage him, to educate him, and so on and so forth. And you find that it is precisely when the voices of the bystanders are mute, then it is the vociferous minority that will hold sway in that particular grouping.
We received the question about bullying amongst adults. Is there really something like that? Because I brought up the question about GBV, and okay, that is gender-based violence. But is there something bullying amongst adults? And the one thing that I also remember just before we started, Sheikh, I was talking to you about bullying in the workplace, corporate bullying, which is again also not addressed because it happens in the office, and you must be big enough to deal with certain things in your space. Your take on that, Uncle Edries?
No, it is. Firstly, it is a universal issue, and it is not something that is only, confined to young people. There are adults that are bullied. You find that in any workplace that has an X number of people, you can safely say there are a number of them that are bullies there. And it's important, And what happens is, because they do that, for one reason, is that, they firstly, they feel insecure. They want to be in charge of a situation. And so that they do not want others, in essence, to become, as it were, the apple of the eye of the CEO, and so on and so forth. And bullying does take place, and it takes place, amongst males. It takes place amongst females. It takes place also, between males and females and males. And that is a reality. And therefore, it's very, very important that even in the workplace, there needs to have programs that educate, inform, inspire, and to ensure that the culture, the environment there is a very, very safe environment, that no one feels a sense of intimidation.
Uncle Idris, we've come to the end of our podcast for this evening, but we're only pressing the pause button. This is not the end of the road. This is the bend in the road. And we're going to have a eating time and meeting time. That's what we're going to have as well, me and you. So I just remember some things that Uncle Idris said. I'm just trying to show that I paid attention, in the class when the teacher was talking. But I want to give you a couple of minutes just in closing, just to wrap up this conversation, and advice to give in generality about bullying.
I think my earnest prayer and hope is this: that teachers and parents need to be the role model for our children. Really, there's a dearth of role models in our community. And so our children need the role model. We need to inspire them to be these wonderful, decent human beings that Allah is pleased with, that in their hands, others people feel safe, that from their tongues, what issues forth are messages of love, rather than messages of anger or whatever, right? And I think it's important that we help our children to understand what it is to be a gregarious, social being. We are part of the ummati of Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and the ummati of Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam is bleeding. And what we want, people there that are nurturers, people that care, people that bring people together. And that's very, very important. We owe it to them, because if you neglect children in the early stages of their life, then sadly you'll be incubating a monster. And when you do that, you find sometimes it can be very, very fatal. Then your tears on the grave of those children, young adults, will be tears of regret. And you will say, I had an opportunity to be present with my children, but I forfeited that, and sadly they are gone. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Wa alaikum
Walaikum
salam wa
salam wa
rahmatullahi ta'ala wa
rahmatullahi wa
barakatuh.
barakatuh.
Allah bless and reward you and preserve you to be with us for many more years, inshallah
Ameen.
ta'ala. Ameen.
Ameen.
Sheikh, we've come to the end of our podcast for this evening. A very important topic of conversation, a very serious topic of conversation. But I saw some light moments in what you said tonight. I just want to point that out. You were talking about bullies, and you were saying that the bullies were always people who had brothers bigger than them. So were you?
They're a backup.
Yeah. So are you saying to me then that automatically takes you out of the equation of having?
That I'm the only male sibling. But Chicha, before we go to that conversation, I'd really like to apologize and thank the viewers who saw this whole program out. Sometimes we face technical issues, and obviously we try and give a product or a podcast which is hiccup free.
Yeah.
But we'd really like to thank the people who, I just say brave the waves with us and go through the hiccups with us, because these issues that we discuss and the specialists that we bring in, are passionate about what they do. So we ask Maf, we want to apologize for me jumping up and micromanaging and bullying.
No, Sheikh, please, you're confusing the word with being assertive and bullying,
Okay,
please.
mashallah, because you sometimes call me a bully.
Yeah, but I still believe that. but you've now distanced yourself from that.
Yes, no.
Because you had no biggest other brothers.
Sometimes the pack could be, non-blood siblings. It could be your friends at school. You have, like Uncle Edries said, the whole clique mentality. You gravitate towards someone, and like I said, you hardly ever, if ever, find a bully who's a loner.
I'm surprised you never asked me that question tonight, but that's fine. I don't ask that question. Let's leave it at that, inshallah. But Sheikh, another week has come to an end. Another podcast has come to an end. What's in store for the rest? I hear. Sorry, just hold on. Let me just take it. I hear something sizzling in the distance. It sounds like there's something, a barbecue, braai.
Yeah, no, it's the month of September. It's a heritage month.
MashaAllah.
And that should be our focus. But sometimes September is called Braai month, and we have a Braai day instead of a heritage day. So in conformity with that theme, we have two special guests for this month.
Sure.
Again, technically, and you see there's a silver lining in everything. So the first time we had Shaykh Navaid Aziz with us, the sound was not so good, and we faced certain technical issues on his side.
Yes.
Right? Because new is not always better. So we had a new computer, new AirPods, and it just didn't work. So next week, inshallah ta'ala, we're doing a program called The Fiqh of Braai, or rather in
barbecue.
In Shaykh Navaid's language, the fiqh of barbecue, inshallah ta'ala. So the Shaykh is both a foodie and a fiqh expert, and so there's a fiqh, with regards to braai. There's certain meats that there's discussion about whether it breaks your wudu or not. These are the type of issues that we will also discuss. And then we have a chef, Anwar Inkerman.
Chef.
Chef Anwar Inkerman,
yes,
who will be doing a show with us, inshallah ta'ala, teaching me and you some quick recipes for braai, inshallah. But I don't think you need to be schooled.
Yeah, I don't know why you're dragging me into this.
No, your grill is clean.
Yeah, grill is clean.
A guy with a clean grill, I break it in. So
that's a possibility. But I've got evidence, and I've got testimonials. jealousy makes you nasty, Sheikh. That's all I'm going to say to you.
That's bullying. But anyway, inshallah ta'ala, we pray that everybody reaps the full benefit of tomorrow, the Eid of
Ameen.
the week, inshallah
Ameen, Ya
ta'ala.
Rab.
We have that special time in the day where du'as are readily accepted from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And like I always mention, the Friday is like Laylatul Qadr, not in its virtue, but we don't know exactly when that hour of dua is. So we use the whole day for dua and asking Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to better our situation.
Ameen,
that we
inshallah.
are in, inshallah.
Inshallah.
And Allah protect all our kids,
Ameen.
those who are bullying and those who are bullied, and those who feel that, there's one question I want to pick up with Uncle Edries, is the whole, fiqhy approach to somebody who takes his life. We will ask now, this person took his life, he committed suicide, and we pass judgment on that individual. But do we ever ask, how did we, what hand did we have in pushing a person to taking his own life? Because he believed that there's no more goodness and nobody to help him, and nobody can bring him out of his dark moments or in his time of sadness. How did we contribute towards that person feeling
Sheikh,
like that?
did you remember having this conversation?
A while back, last year, I think.
Yeah. It's almost a year.
Almost a year.
And we had a similar conversation also because of teenagers taking their life, also because of bullying. It's a whole lot of things. So subhanAllah, it's things that we need to constantly remind one another about. Protect our children, protect ourselves, protect our property, and so forth, inshallah. But we must talk about it. And to parents, and I speak to myself here as a parent, is that, when the children speak to us, let's pay attention, man. Let's not be that cyberspace parent that gets sucked into it. But that goes for all other conversations as well.
Correct.
I'm not going to point any fingers, but I'm just mentioning it. Sheikh, but I close up for us, inshallah.
Inshallah ta'ala. Like I said again, Friday, Thursday night, Laylatul Jummah, best night, best day of the week. Sure. Pray that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala grants us the benefit of it, inshallah ta'ala. And I received a letter from a masjid calling the people to come back to the masjid. So if we are someone, inshallah, and we can only be the judge of ourselves, if we are healthy and we are able to find space in the masjid, because the masajid are still operating at 50 or 50%, whatever the latest rules are. I've lost track of it, but the masjid is not at full capacity. Try and make that effort, inshallah ta'ala. Tomorrow, if you are healthy, you're not over 60 and you don't have any illnesses and you haven't been back to the masjid, try and make your way to the masjid tomorrow, inshallah. That's my closing statement, inshallah. سبحانك اللهم وبحمدك نشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت نستغفرك ونتوب إليك.